I call the Patton Township Board of Supervisors meeting Wednesday, July 10th, 2024 at 5:30 to order. We welcome all, especially new Patton Township residents, to the Patton Township community, a place for all. As you are able, please rise with the board in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on the agenda is announcements. Are there any announcements at this time?
No.
All right. Additions to the posted agenda. Are there any additional items to be added to the posted agenda at this time? All right. Next is public comments. Residents and taxpayers may address the board on issues of interest to the township. Comments related to a specific agenda item should be deferred until that point in the meeting. If you are attending by Zoom, please use the raised hand feature on the Zoom application and wait for the chair to indicate that it is your opportunity to speak. If you are attending in person, please approach the podium and wait for the chair to indicate it is your opportunity to speak. Are there any public comments at this time?
Not seeing any.
All right. Thank you. Next on the agenda is presentations and public hearing. Amy, you want to start that?
Yeah, so this evening we are going to be celebrating the Alpha Fire Company's 125th anniversary. The community is invited to an event in downtown State College on July 20th. We have members of the Alpha Fire Company here, and we have your proclamation that you can
get ready to read. All right. Would any of our guests would like to say a few words to the community? If not, I'm not going to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Go, there you go.
Good evening. So my name's Tony Breen. I'm the volunteer chief of the Alpha Fire Company, and we're celebrating our 125th anniversary, and it's been support of people like you, the townships like you, supporting the Alpha Fire Company to move forward in the future for the Alpha Fire Company. So we really appreciate that, and we say thank you to the supervisors of Patton Township.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Mm-hmm. All right. I would like to read your proclamation, and it gives me great honor because I'm also the public safety chair for the Council of Governments. So with that, I would like to say Patton Township Board of Supervisors, a place for all, a proclamation celebrating the 125th anniversary of the Alpha Fire Company. Whereas the Alpha Fire Company was founded in 1899 with 29 firefighters and a hand-drawn carts. Whereas the fire company's mission is to protect the lives and property of the residents of the borough of State College and the surrounding communities. And whereas the company has expanded to three fire stations and 17 major pieces of apparatus to serve the community. The main fire station moved from Fraser Street to the current location in 1974. The Patton Township Station opened in 2001. And the College Township Station opened in 2010. Whereas the Alpha Fire Company has a diverse membership and approximately 80 active members who come to us from all backgrounds and life experiences. And whereas the fire company wishes to thank all of its current and life members for keeping the spirit of those original 29 firefighters alive. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Patton Township Board of Supervisors do hereby congratulate the Alpha Fire Company on its 125th anniversary. The residents of Patton Township are fortunate to be served by a high-caliber fire company that puts the needs of our community first. Proclaim this day, 10th day of July 2024, signed by the Patton Township Board of Supervisors. So thank you.
They should, yeah.
Volunteers, right?
Yes. All right, get on in.
Gather round.
Kenny's doing an outstanding job.
You should never ask me.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you, Amy. Guys, before you leave, would you give us a minute so we can make this official?
Sure.
Thank you, Amy.
What?
And
It's new.
can I get a motion to approve the proclamation celebrating the Alpha Fire Company 125th anniversary? Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The proclamation is approved. Thank you, board. Now, officially.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Next on the agenda is Top Trees West Storm Water Management Agreement. Amy?
Okay, so I will start this. Betsy Dupuy, our solicitor, is on Zoom in case you have any questions, and we also have the developer from Top Trees West here as well. So during the development of the healthcare facility at Top Trees West, we noted significant issues with the stormwater basin for the development. The basin had developed several small sinkholes, which are a little bit larger now, and fissures from rainstorms back in the spring and early summer. So we met with the Center County Conservation District, the developer, and the developer's geotechnical engineer to discuss repairing the basin and to agree on a path forward. It was decided at that meeting that the best course of action was to formalize our discussions from the meeting in an agreement between the township, the developer, and Mount Nittany Medical Center, which is the adjacent landowner and the only property owner actually in Top Trees West right now. That looks at the agreement addresses both the short-term repair of the basin as well as the long-term maintenance and repair responsibilities. The agreement was drafted by Betsy and reviewed by the legal counsels for both the developer and Mount Nittany Medical Center. Because Mount Nittany needed to start, there was a deadline they had to meet so that they could start actually moving their operations into the new facility. Betsy authorized myself to sign the agreement, so we're just asking you to ratify that agreement this evening.
Are there any questions for Amy at this time? Any questions from Betsy at this time? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the Top Tree West Stormwater Management Agreement?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes to approve the Top Tree West Storm Water Management Agreement. Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is the Village at Penn State's Phase 9, 10, and 16 Corrective Action Plan. Amy, I guess?
So again, I will start this. Betsy is also on Zoom about this one as well, and the developer's also here. So when the plans for Phase 9, 10, and 16 at the Village of Penn State, and these are the single-family homes, Village of Penn State, were approved by the township back in 2019, they were approved pursuant to our plan community regulations, and they had setbacks for the residential lots. And they had a different setback for the front and a different setback for the garage. The front was supposed to be 20 feet for the dwelling and 25 feet for the garage. Under the plan community regulations, developers can propose setbacks for all the buildings in the development. There's no requirement that the setbacks be the same for each building, as the regulations allow flexibility. That's why we have the plan community regulations, which are subject to approval by the township to account for unique lot arrangements. So when the developer desired to have the 20-foot front yard setback for all the buildings in each phase, however, to assure sufficient parking depth for vehicles on the driveways to avoid overhanging the public sidewalk and or flowing into the street, we set the setbacks for the garages at 25 feet. So back during, these lots have been developed over a number of years, back during the winter or last fall, we went to go inspect one of the homes that was out there, and we discovered that the setbacks on several of the lots within the development for the garage were actually set incorrectly. So they were set at 20 feet for both the home and the garage by the developer's agent prior to the construction of the home. So there are about 13 lots that were impacted in Phase 9, Phase 10, and Phase 16. So we worked with the developer to try to figure the best way to address this concern, because what happens now is you have residents who have homes that are non-conforming uses. Now there are a couple of these homes that aren't sold yet, but that are non-conforming uses. So if they were ever to come to the township to try to get a zoning permit to do any kind of addition or anything to their house, that would be problematic. We talked at some length about how to address this. One of our concerns was that we didn't necessarily want to make all of these residents, since there was a group of them, go through the zoning hearing board process to get a variance, which they could get a variance. It was not obviously their hardship that they created. It was created by the developer. But we thought probably the easiest thing to do would be to adjust the front setbacks to be 20 feet for the garage instead of 25 feet, which brings all of them into conformity. They're all very close to being where they need to be, so it brings them all into conformity. And then the second piece of this is we're actually in the process of working on a developer's agreement with the developer of the villages at Penn State to address some of the processes that need to be put in place to make sure that we don't have a repeat of this problem moving forward. And also there's some loose ends within that plan community, because it's been going on for a while, that we want to tie up. We had a meeting. We sent a notification letter out to all of the residents that were impacted, invited them to a meeting. The developer was there, township staff, the township solicitor, and then we followed up after that meeting with emails to all the residents that we didn't see at that meeting, and I've reached out and spoken to, I believe, all of them now. I think there's 2 signatures that I'm still waiting to get back. There are people that don't live in the area, but I've talked with them, and they've indicated they will be signing. When the board approves this corrective action plan and we get the last 2 signatures back, we will have all of this recorded, and it will be indexed with each lot's deed. So that way, if there's an issue when it's sold, when they do a title search, it will come up with the deed, so there shouldn't cause any problems for the residents. And one other thing to note is if something unfortunate were to happen, such as a tornado or a natural disaster, and the home is destroyed, it would go back to the original setbacks in the plan as recorded on the plan, not to these setbacks. So we're asking you to consider approval of this corrective action plan this evening so that we can continue moving forward. The draft of the developer's agreement I sent back to Mr. Poole today, we need to get that finalized. We'd like you to act on that in August if we can get all the everything worked out with that legally.
Okay, and our solicitor is on board with everything.
Yes, she's been very instrumental in all of this, yes.
Right. Okay, for the board, are there any questions?
Sutan has a question.
Sutan, all right.
Yeah, that's fine. Just curiosity, so why is it 25 feet setback for a garage?
Whenever they originally talked about that, the issue you get into is 20 feet is sufficient for a vehicle. But if you look, the average individual does not pull their car up to the garage door. People leave a space in front of the garage and the front of the car, between the garage and the car, to walk in front of. So there's still sufficient space, it's just these people are gonna have to be cognizant, they're going to have to make sure they pull their car against the garage door.
And just curiosity of like when developing and building, and how often does this type of issue occur?
Yeah, that's curious. I don't know that have we ever had this issue before, Ken? Yeah, I don't know that I mean,
This is the first time.
this is the first time. Yeah, so this is a unique circumstance, which is why, again, we're trying to put an agreement in place that has some processes in it to try to avoid this happening again.
Ken, can you just announce who you are for
I'm the Public
answering?
Works Director.
Thank you. I just want to be on record. Supervisor McGregor, are you okay?
I'm good now.
All right. So if we don't have any other questions and the board is comfortable, can I make a motion to approve the Village Penn State Phase 9, 10, and 16 Corrective Action Plan?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? The motion passes to approve the Village at Penn State Phase 9, 10, and 16 Corrective Action Plan. Thank you. Next,
Thank you, everyone, I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the staff's help and Betsy on this, it's helped a lot, really appreciate it.
Good to see you again.
thank you.
Been a while.
All right, next on the agenda is a resolution 2024-05, amending the Globe Center Region Library Article of Agreement. Amy, you're on.
So this just sets out what was discussed by the general forum, which is to take the seat that's currently held by Half Moon Township when they exit the library in January, and it will now rotate between College Township and Harris Township. The only difference between when we last talked about this is that the intergovernmental cooperation law actually changed back in 2019, so we can do this adoption by resolution rather than by ordinance. So there's no public hearing needed, you just adopt this by resolution if you're so inclined.
Okay. Are there any questions at this time? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve Resolution 2024-05, amending the Globe Center Region Library Article of Agreement?
So moved.
Is there a second? All right, discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? The motion to approve the Resolution 2024-05, amending the Globe Center Region Library Article of Agreement passes. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the Public Safety Monthly Report. Sergeant Sinpenko, we welcome you. We'll give the monthly report.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be in front of you guys, my
Great.
yearly visit. And the chief always throws me a softball with the June report. It's usually an easy one. It's pretty uneventful. But you should have it in front of you. Our numbers compared with 2023, but in June 2024, officers made 208 traffic stops, wrote 15 citations, made 9 criminal arrests, and bike patrol did 16 miles with 25 business checks. Under the highlights for the month, under department notes, a female was arrested for writing a bad check of $1,500 to a local business. Bad check policy, normally what we do is we give the person who wrote the bad check every opportunity to make good on it before we proceed with any legal action, and that's what it eventually came to in this case. A male was arrested for access device fraud and theft by deception, where he had placed himself on a customer's account at a local business and then ended up making a purchase worth $1,000 that he was not authorized to take. And the suspect had used some fake names to try to cover his tracks, but the officer did a good job uncovering that and identifying the suspect and getting a warrant for him. Another male was arrested for criminal mischief who had broke out some windows at some township businesses, causing about $4,000 worth of damage. And one of our detectives did some old-fashioned detective work on this, got some surveillance tape, and identified the suspect, got a confession from him, so it was nice to wrap that up. 4 arrests were made for retail theft and 1 for driving under the influence. Looks like officers were batting a little over 500 on serving warrants. and they conducted 12 vacation home checks. We had 340 incidents, 208 traffic stops, 9 criminal arrests, and 8 warrant services, and didn't use force at all during the month of June. Under community relations, the officers toured the new Penn Highlands Hospital on Colonnade Boulevard. Officer Tuskovich did a site assessment of the Grays Woods Elementary School. Officer Tuskovich is a school resource officer for the township, and he has a lot of training in preventing and mitigating and stopping an active threat, and that's what he's doing when he's doing those site assessments, is making sure that that school is as safe as possible for the students and staff there. And the K-9 team visited Reliance Bank and did a little presentation for them. Under training and department activities, our tactical team officers attended their monthly training. Detective Fedorenko and Officer Tuskovich attended Pennsylvania Justice Network training. We call it JNet for short, and what that is, what JNet is the conduit for us to receive information like criminal histories and PennDOT records and other kind of sensitive information that allows us to do our job. And they make sure we're all compliant with that, because if we aren't, we can't work. So they do a good job making sure we dot our I's and cross our T's on those. Officer Ottolini attended Crisis Intervention Team training, which is a week-long 40-hour course for responding to mental health incidents, and we send all our new officers to that, and that comes in real handy. He also attended a 3-day emergency vehicle operator course, which again, all our new officers attend a 3-day intensive course for operating an emergency vehicle. And then all of us, every other year, we attend a recertification for that. So driving is a big part of our job, so we want to make sure we don't hit anything. So that's why we do those trainings. K-9 team did their required 2 training days a month, and they also completed a yearly 3-day recertification course, and they had a couple call-outs. And then we hired our newest officer a couple weeks ago, Michael Friend, and he's currently in our field training program. And there's some pictures of him in your booklet. And then Chief Jolly is earning his paycheck and then some. With all the other stuff he does, he found time to attend a humane officer meeting, the Happy Valley Business Association meeting, the Center County Chiefs meeting, and he was at the Crisis Intervention Team training graduation ceremony. So that about covers it for our department activities. You'll have a list of the calls for the month. We had 340 calls for the month of June, which is down a little bit from May. May had 498. You have to realize we aren't doing a lot of school checks because we only had a week or so of the elementary and middle schools being in, so we didn't do a lot of school checks. And then plus the great portion of 40,000 people leave the center region in May, or in late May, and that we don't deal with for a couple months. So that also contributes to our lower numbers for calls. But our highest are, as usual, EMS assists and traffic incidents. So if anyone has any questions on anything specific on the report, I'm happy to answer them. If I don't have the answer, I will find it for you.
Great. Any questions from the board?
So don't write a bad check.
Well, we want to thank you for sitting in and doing an outstanding job, and you're always welcome.
I'm happy to be here.
You don't have to, unless you want to.
I wanted to say,
Supervisor Whitman?
my husband and I watch a lot of, what are they called, video shows, or what are they called, serial shows on TV, you know, like the murder mysteries. Anyway, I can just see your officers in there, like, checking out all these resources, because I see them on TV everywhere. Got that one, got that one, got that one. Sort of brings it out to life, thanks.
I always say, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, like, as far as like TV, like police shows go,
Yeah.
the only one that I think is realistic, if you watch the old Barney Miller TV show, that's what real police work is like.
I hear you.
If we need something, Amy knows where to find me.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Matt.
Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda is the Public Works Operation Street Closure Request. Amy, I think that's you again.
Yep, so we received a request to close Norwood Lane between North Oak Lane and Asper Lane for a block party on August 24th from 2 to 8 p.m. This is their annual block party, and they do notify everyone in their neighborhood via their local Facebook group and paper invites for those that are not in their Facebook group. And I can say I attended this event last year, and it was a delightful, family-friendly event.
Okay,
Got it on my calendar.
all right.
Is this the one we fought over last year? 2 years ago? Was this the one we fought over last year, or 2 years ago?
No, we didn't.
Yes, there was an issue, yes.
It should have
There was an
been
issue with this
meeting
one.
about
There was, we
We talked
discussed the
about
noise.
it.
the
That was so
noise, yeah.
diplomatic.
in the
We
starting
talked.
time.
Yes.
Noon or 3.
Got it.
Yeah.
I have,
Something they do every year.
yeah, and they have a baking contest, and I was the judge for that last year, and I highly recommend the baking contest.
I know, we had questions and Chief looked into it and resolved it as well. So without further ado, if the board is comfortable, can I get a motion to approve the closure of Northwood Lane between North Oak Lane and Asper Lane for a block party on August 24th?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? The motion passes to the closure of Norwood Lane between North Oak Lane and Asper Lane for a block party on August 24, 2024. Thank you. Next on the agenda is Engineering, Planning, and Zoning. Planning Commission report. The Planning Commissioner member, Rich?
Yep, he's on Zoom. Rich, can you hear us?
Well,
Yep, I'm good to go. We met on July 1st, and the only thing that we did is we had a nice presentation from the Center Region Planning Agency on giving data and statistics and things on housing in our township. And it was very informative on housing and specifically attainable housing. And what came out of it is, I believe in September, we're going to try to get on the board calendar with the Planning Commission to have a meeting. And I believe we're going to have a very similar presentation and go over some of the same data that we were given on July 1st. So that was the crux of our meeting, and we look forward to seeing you all at our joint meeting sometime here in the fall.
okay, cool. Thank you. Any questions from the board at this time? Seeing none. Rich, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. See you soon.
Great. Next on the agenda is the Hall Family Preserve non-native invasive plant and native let me see, I can't even get it out. Competitive plant control
So
project.
we recently completed a forestry management plan for the Hall Family Preserve and the Grays Woods Preserve. And if you remember, we received funding from the Hamer Foundation to do both the plan and then also some implementation work of the forestry stuff that needs to be done out there. So the plan outlines forestry activities that should be undertaken over the next 10 years to control the invasives and also to protect the ecosystem that are on both of the tracts of land. So as we're moving into implementing the recommendations, and you will actually see the full plan itself in the fall, the Open Space Committee's been doing some further work on that. Our forestry consultant, Mike Wolf from Appalachian Forest Consultants, solicited quotes from 3 qualified applicators to perform non-native invasive plant and native competitive plant control on 197 acres just in the Hall Family Preserve. The Open Space Committee is talking about the long-term management of Grays Woods Preserve, and we'll have a recommendation for that in the fall. So the work will be spread out over 2 years. We have $132,000 left in the Hall Family, or the Hamer Foundation grant that we will put towards this. We also have funds in the township's open space account that we can use to put towards the bulk of it. So the recommendation coming from Mr. Wolf and Ms. Ombalski, who's our other consultant, is to award the contract for this project to Harner's Forestry and Wildlife Consulting in a not-to-exceed amount of $159,812 for 2024, understanding probably not all of that will be billed out in 2024 because all the work might not be able to be done this year, and $44,387 for 2025. And this, taking this action now prior to you actually formally adopting the forestry plan just lets us to get a head start on the invasives, because the invasives are getting pretty bad out there and the costs are increasing to do this work.
Okay, any questions from the board regarding Betsy?
I just want to say, I was very impressed with Mike Wolf's assessment of Hamer's assessment, and the contractor that they went with had itemized everything in the spreadsheet and then done some rough calculations based on area. Ken, you probably had a chance. I was just impressed that he was going to use various methods to control the weeds and hand cut some of the bittersweet vine, I guess.
Yeah, it's going to just dependent upon whatever species they were targeting.
Yeah.
Because different methods are more successful depending on what the target is.
Yeah, and he just detailed those. Yeah, I was just real impressed with that.
Okay. If everything is, if the board is comfortable with the recommendation to award the all-family preserve, can I get a motion?
Yeah, I'll move to accept the proposal from Mr. Harner.
Forestry and Wildlife Consulting. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is approved. Thank you. Amy, next is the Administration 2025 COG Program Plan.
So what I put at your places tonight is the latest version of the comment guide that has the comments that I've received to date. So that has all of Supervisor Whitman's, Supervisor Hashesky, the manager, the finance director, and Supervisor Rob's comments. I did reach out to the COG, but they're not here this evening. I guess they must have had conflict. So we just need to come up with our consensus comments to send back to them on the program plan.
Okay. At this time, Supervisor Elliott and Magruder, do you have any extra comments on these? If you would like Amy to add. Amy, if I'm not mistaken, we were supposed to be unanimous in our...
Yeah, so do you want to go down through the ones that we have comments on and then just formulate what you want to send back?
Yeah.
Okay.
May I make a comment about the finance director's comments?
Yes, Larry.
I apparently put my comment for the first item under the second item.
Oh, geez.
This one should be under here,
Okay.
because it doesn't make any sense
Wait,
that I asked for funding for grant funding on furniture.
Okay.
We don't
Okay.
get that, so
Okay.
just make that change.
All right, do you want me to read these?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so the first item is, should electric vehicle charging infrastructure be installed at the COG building? Estimated capital cost of $100,000. Supervisor Rob's comment was, the discussion on the charging infrastructure has been discussed for at least 2 years now. One of the discussion points was whether the public could use the charging infrastructure. Since we are purchasing EVs, we need to have the EV charging infrastructure installed. Supervisor Whitman said, seek grants specific to EVs and EV charging stations. Consider staging the build out of the charging stations, spreading the cost over 2 or more budget cycles. Agree a standalone charging system needs to be considered. Budget for software to monitor EV charging use and assign to appropriate department and allow for public use. My comment, this should be coordinated with the parking lot resurfacing project. Funding for this project should be sought through the PA local share account statewide program. And the finance director's comment was he agreed with the manager and would like to see some grant funding. So it sounds like there is consensus that we're okay with the project, but there's some concerns with how to fund it.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there any question? All right. Next.
Do you?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you need to add in there for the software, or is that, do you think the software would be covered in another part of the budget, or would that be a small part of the budget that we wouldn't need to call it out?
Oh, I don't know if that has the software in it or not. I would call it out.
You would call it, okay, so.
I would call it on. I like the idea that spreading the cost over 2 or more budget cycles,
Yeah.
unless it's completely covered by grant funding.
Yeah.
Then you, of course,
Exactly. Okay.
don't have to spread it out.
Yeah.
But I think you want to say that.
Yeah, so just add number 4, just call out number 4.
Yep.
Budget software.
Yep.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, so I'll combine all of these comments into one consensus, and then what I'll do is I'll send these all out to you tomorrow if you want to take a look at it before I send it off to the COG.
All right.
Okay, next item. Should the items within Suite 2, the CRCA conference room, be repaired and aging furniture be replaced? Estimated cost of $25,000. Supervisor Rob said, depending on the age of the furniture, whether it's funding is available at this time on replacements of items in Suite 2, if funds are available to make the repairs and replacements. Supervisor Whitman agreed on replacing the office chairs for a variety of important reasons. She does not agree on updating other aspects of the suite unless the repair involves the safe and proper function of an item. Supervisor Hashesky said the updates seem unnecessary, replace furniture as needed. The manager's comment was just, I don't see the need to update the conference room, but I support the aging furniture. So I think we're all in a consensus to replace the aging furniture and to only do the other stuff as needed. Great. Okay.
Maybe,
Next.
hold on. Also, we have a comment from Finance Director?
No, that comment's for the last one.
Oh, sorry.
I don't really have any comments on.
Okay, gotcha. Sorry. Next.
Next item, should the iPads used by the CRCA new construction inspectors be upgraded? That's an estimated operational cost of $2,888, capital cost of $18,000. Supervisor Whitman says yes, the iPads should be upgraded, and her question was, will the implementation of a citizen access system to allow permanent applications access to review comments be sufficiently accessible on non-Mac computers? I think that's a good question. And Supervisor Hashesky supports replacing the iPads and that this should be a budgeted item since they don't last more than a few years. So it sounds like we're all in favor.
Yeah.
I think they're
Any questions?
I was just going to say, I think they're pretty good about non-Mac users, because I haven't had any trouble with that, but I do my due diligence on that, because I've had trouble with it.
Questions on this side? Okay, next.
Okay, next, should the AmeriCorps program sustainability position be funded for another year? The estimated net impact is $13,000. Supervisor Whitman is in favor of this because of addressing the specific actions and goals set out in the Climate Action Plan. Supervisor Hashesky would much rather see a regular staff position than an AmeriCorps volunteer. So what kind of comment do we want to send back?
I would much rather see that too, but I think that's less likely.
Yeah, I don't know that you'll get a regular staff position. The finance committee has been.
Yes.
There's just no money for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It depends on how much you're gonna pay that person.
Yeah. I think it's on the long range. I
It
know it's on
is.
the long range.
It is.
Yeah, they're thinking always,
But at this time, no.
yeah.
So our comment back would be that we support the AmeriCorps
Right.
position?
Yes.
Okay.
Anybody who works with Pam, she's very good at directing them.
Okay. Next item, should consulting support for the development of transportation funding applications be funded? Estimated operational cost of $50,700, ongoing net impact of $50,700. Supervisor Hashesky said, "I trust the committee's recommendation." Supervisor Whitman supports the consulting support for the applications if the CCMPO can guarantee it will make a concerted effort to seek out and include opportunities and programs for resiliency improvements, alternative fuels, and charging infrastructure. And our finance director, how much in funding did this position generate in 2024? Which is a very good question.
Yeah, really, that's the most important question. Although I would, of course,
That should be moved up first.
Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
That was a big discussion last year during the budget process,
I'm proud of it,
was, this person's supposed to come in and do funding applications. We would expect to see an increase in funding, so
yeah.
I wanted to go back and revisit that question from last year.
Yep.
Quick question there, are they also expected to essentially fund their own position? Is that sort of the
So
implication?
I am a firm believer that if I hire somebody, they should provide some sort of benefit. And if their job is to increase funding, that yes, they should cover it. For instance, the person with the library board that goes on and gets grants,
Yeah,
that person is supposed to cover their salary by additional grants.
But not, I mean, a lot of grants prohibit use for salaries, so you're talking about just shuffling around.
It's, yes, like
Yes,
shuffling the
talk
money
about-
around, yep.
I'm not talking about it used specifically for that salary, but,
If
You
you're
know,
only-
if
you're
I
funding
can-
50,000 and
Hold
you're
on a
only bringing
second.
in $20,000 in grant, like,
Yeah.
we don't need you.
yeah,
Just use that 50,000 and.
Right,
Right.
yeah.
yeah. Okay.
That's the way and you'll see that again when we talk about the parks program.
Any other questions?
So I'll move the finance director's comment up to the front, and then do you want to keep in that you support Supervisor Whitman's, the rest of her comment, if it guarantees it will make a concerted effort to seek out the other opportunities?
maybe not with the if, strongly encourage to make a concerted effort, or someone strongly encouraged to
Yeah,
seek
yeah.
out.
Not guaranteed,
Exactly.
Okay. Okay, got it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, next, the CCMPO Benner Pike Corridor Study, should that be funded? Estimated operational impact, $7,605. Ongoing net impact, $7,605. Supervisor Whitman supports the funding of the study if the carbon footprint of congestion and other traffic unpleasantries can be a factor. Supervisor Hashesky also supports the study.
So I just want to say this about the carbon footprint factor. That data can be achieved through formula that's put up by the EPA website. It's very readily available. And I think it's a way of looking at a problem. I'm not beginning to pretend that this study would in any way be able to reduce the carbon footprint, but I think we need to go in with that as
Okay.
a lens. I mean, who knows, maybe they'll set up a little bus route between the houses and Wyeth, which is, or going into Belton. I could hope. Thank you.
Or is the rest of the board agreeing on that?
Okay.
All right.
Next, should the Center County Passenger Rail Access Study be funded? Estimated capital cost of $3,042. Ongoing net impact of $3,042. Supervisor Whitman supports this and mentions the footprint, again, the lower carbon footprint for rail travel. And Supervisor Hashesky also supports this.
Amy also supported that.
I'm sorry if I didn't see that.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Supervisor Abrams.
I support it tremendously.
For what?
Okay.
I support it as well.
I'd also like to point out that about a year ago, Mike Pike was here asking for funding for the airport. And everybody voted for it except me. Of course, I was okay with funding, but I said, hey, we need to get some rail, look at some rail funding.
Okay.
I only did it to see this look of surprise and horror on his face, but he did agree that it was something we need to start looking at.
Yeah, it's been discussed for a long time around here.
Yeah, we just,
All right, next.
Next is, should a temporary refuse and recycling program assistant be funded? Estimated net impact of $27,438, estimated operational cost of $2,400. Both Supervisor Whitman and Hashesky support this. I also support it because working on the other side with Shelley with the new contract, that is going to be a very heavy lift.
Okay. Any other comments on this side? Is everybody in agreement?
And just to let you know, Susan, in a position such as this, it's the savings that you would have from somebody in the refuge department handling that new contract, that you bring somebody in. So you don't have somebody that's, what's her name,
Shelley.
Shelley spending all of her time doing that. So in this case, I wouldn't expect that they would generate any revenue, but they should help in the position.
yeah, it's going to be tough.
That's going to be a heavy lift.
It is.
Okay. Next item, should the refuse and recycling program contract for removal of refuse containers? The estimated net impact is $10,000. Supervisor Hashesky and Supervisor Whitman both agree with this. I also think this is important because, as Supervisor Whitman noted, you have to ensure success from the get-go, and if you have a way that people can get rid of their old container and then they get their cart,
Right.
you have more opportunity for success on the flip side.
Okay.
That was your comment. That was a good one.
Next.
Okay, next, should the refuse and recycling program food waste drop-off program be funded? Estimated operating cost of $12,000, capital cost of $4,000. Supervisor Hashesky and Supervisor Whitman and the manager all support this. This is actually a pretty popular program with our residents.
Okay.
All over the cog.
Yes. Okay, next. Should a program specialist for Parks and Recreation be hired in April 2025? This one's kind of a heavy lift. Estimated personnel cost of $119,369,000, operational cost of $1,900, revenue of $18,610, net impact $102,659, ongoing annual net impact $107,592,000. Supervisor Hashesky, Supervisor Whitman support this. I support it, but I question hiring this over more people that can do work in our parks, that would do maintenance work, because we desperately need that with the new regional parks. And the finance director, why don't you explain your question?
So this is what I was discussing before. Presumably this position will allow for much improved service regarding the programs. Will be accompanied with an increase in the program fees. They're only showing $18,610 of estimated revenue, and what the percentage increase in revenue. So it's been, in my 9 years here, every year, I made the comment that if you want to increase the service in the park programs, you should increase the fee for the park programs. They don't want to do that. It's always been my contention that it's much easier to ask 5 boards for an increase in funding than to ask thousands of people to pay more. Okay? Get a lot less blowback, and you don't even have to get all 5 of the municipalities to agree. You only have to get 3 of them. Okay? It's always been my contention. They've always said, well, we can't increase the fees, and I've always responded with, well, don't you have a wait list? Because I'm sure the people on that wait list will be more than happy to pay a little bit more to get off the wait list.
Yeah.
If the people who are in the programs don't want to pay the extra fee. So I don't disagree with the fact that it'd be nice to have a program coordinator, or whatever this person is, a program specialist. But I think that program specialist if we're going to have 120,000 of personnel cost, should have a little bit more than less than $20,000 of increased revenue. That's my comment.
And again, those people, sorry.
All right, Supervisor Whitman?
Oh, you-
Supervisor?
When's the last time they increased the fees?
That I couldn't tell you because they always say we can't increase the fees every year. So I don't know that they've increased the fees since I've been here.
Yeah, and so when we get into the next agenda item on the parks governance structure, this was a topic of conversation this morning with the managers. And one of the topics of conversation we had was how the authority functions, and the authority technically is setting the fees. It's not set by the COG itself. So there's a little bit of a disconnect, I think, on some levels. So, yeah, I think, honestly, one of the things, and this is one of my comments down further, is that the whole funding structure for Center Region Parks and Rec really needs to be reevaluated. Susan Wheeler and I have talked about the fact that we're paying based on a COG formula, not based on the amount of acreage that we have that needs to be maintained. And the discussion that's been floating around amongst some of the elected officials is maybe there should be a memorandum of understanding that says, in Patton Township, we will do X, Y, and Z, so that the township then knows if we want to do A through X, we have to fund that ourselves, but there's an understanding, and then you could wrap a whole discussion on the fees and the rate structure into that. And I just think, and this has been, and I give Mr. Fontaine a ton of credit, because back in 2010, when these parks were all talked about, he kept saying, how are you going to maintain them? How will you maintain them? How will you operate them? You don't have the staff. And that's my concern, is that we're putting stress on that staff, and instead of addressing the stress, which is the maintenance side of things, you're hiring a program person. It just, the whole thing needs to be kind of blown up and reimagined, I think. Elliot?
Elliot, I'm sorry.
Given the fact that we need to study this more, I'm opposed to installing, I'm opposed to this at the moment.
Can you put your mic closer? Yeah, I can't.
I don't want to be heard any longer.
I don't want to hear.
No, I'm opposed to putting this in effect if there's some question about it. It has to be studied, and the best way to get the study started would be to require that it be studied.
Supervisor Magruder?
Yeah, I mean, I've been confused too over the years about not increasing the fees. And again, you have people on the wait list, and yet they're still like paying taxes to have this stuff funded. And you have people, the majority of people not actually utilizing these services.
Exactly.
And they're the ones being taxed,
They're the ones that are
paying for the people who actually use
If the
it.
program fees don't cover the cost of the program, then the taxpayers of the center region are subsidizing the people that are using the program.
Yep.
It's okay to some extent, but let's do it using scholarships or something like that for the more needy people who can't afford the program than just doing it.
Yeah. And yeah, so, yeah, the more, yeah, people, underserved populations definitely having a way of subsidizing that. And
Exactly.
from my awareness of a small N, the people who have their children engaged in these activities, they could pay a few extra dollars. I should say that. Yeah, so that's weird to me.
Yes.
Supervisor Whitman?
Yeah, so I do think it is really an issue, at least on the parks program manager, that it's an issue of equity and inclusion, that they're wanting to consider people who couldn't ordinarily afford it or as easily afford it. So I think, even adding, I don't know if we add it here or mention it, I know there are devices by which they get the community to contribute, but what about setting up a, why am I blanking on the word,
Scholarship?
Scholarship, thank you, that's the word. So you have a donation of money and then you use that and build on that every year. And also, like, speaking in terms of the any additional personnel funding, I should say, the addition of essentially funding their own position. Look at the pools. What is the ratio there of what an annual membership is and the cost of maintaining the pool? I'm certain that we underwrite some.
So the operation of the pools, not counting the capital equipment, the operations of the pools are self-sufficient.
And have always
We
been.
do not contribute anything. So the users of the pools are paying for the day-to-day operations of the pools. Now, for the every 5 years, 7 years, replacement of equipment, filters and stuff like that, we're paying for that. I don't have an issue. And there's also, I believe, a scholarship type thing with the pools. If you can't afford the membership to the pools, that they help you out. Okay, but municipal contributions, we do not contribute to the operations of the pools.
Yeah,
So the parks can set up the same model if they want. We would pay for the
the
cattle and all the
Yeah.
equipment and mowing.
the discussion that needs to happen on the park side, back when they did the pools, back in 2008, I think is when they borrowed the money to do the pools, the discussion was, we're gonna do this, and it's gonna be self-funded, basically. So for a number of years, we weren't even paying into the debt service, right?
Yes.
The debt service was covered by the user fees. The Parks Capital Committee had these discussions about the regional parks, about, in vague terms, about how we're gonna do fundraising and what opportunities we're gonna look at. Those conversations, for a variety of reasons, just never advanced forward. And that's probably the piece that needs to be picked up, because, again, our park system is a lot larger than anybody ever imagined, and we're operating on a model that was set up back in the probably 90s, if not before that. And that's the piece that needs to be looked at, right? Because if they can make it work on the pool side, there has to be a way to make it work on the park side.
Okay, Supervisor McGrew.
Yeah, how quickly could we move to start looking into that?
So, again, I think this wraps kind of into the next agenda item, the governance committee discussion. But I think the opportunity is, maybe you say, look, this is their number one priority, right, the
Yeah.
COG. So maybe you say, we're not supportive of this year, we'd like to do X, Y, and Z before we do that, and talk about looking into the funding and the fee structure and the other things. And maybe if they get more comments like
Right.
that.
I think we say at this point for this item that we need a lot more information as to what this position is going to do and how it's going to benefit the Parks and Rec. I mean, they need to sell us a lot better than just saying, we need a program specialist. I don't know what a program specialist does, okay? All I'm assuming is that if I were, a couple years ago, we were talking about the food truck, okay? My big argument on the food truck was, okay, you're gonna buy a food truck. That food truck has to pay for itself. I am not subsidizing a food truck as Patton Township. I wouldn't want to as a resident of Patton Township if I were. I think that if you're gonna have a food truck and you're gonna be selling food, you should cover the cost of that food truck. Every other food truck in the center region has to cover its cost. You should too. Just because you have municipalities that pony up the money doesn't mean that you should be able to get away without it. Anybody else that would be doing these types of programs would have to cover their costs. They wouldn't have a way of subsidizing it. And we have to get away from Parks and Rec's belief that, oh, we can't charge that
more,
much.
yeah.
We should look at it a little bit closer.
So Amy, could you read back what we're going to submit? as the
So
board?
the suggestion from the finance director was that the board needs more information and justification of what this position will do and how it will benefit the Parks and Rec agency.
Great. Any other questions?
Yeah, I would just say within that, my curiosity, I love the way you phrased it of like, you need to sell this to us. But, and so not only, shifting with the fee structure, how you're going to pay for this stuff, but also getting back to the equity and inclusion, we're all for subsidizing underserved populations. I want, and they may have these numbers here, but I want to know what's the actual demographic or population that's actually being served and utilized in these programs. Because if you can tell me that 40% of the users are people in low SES,
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, I'll feel a little bit better. But if you're going to tell me 2%, 4% are underserved and others are more privileged monetarily, why are we subsidizing that?
And that's part of the whole dog and pony show they should be giving us, the sales pitch they should be giving us, is look, this is why we need this person, and that would be a very good reason. But, you know what, I would love to have an assistant working for me up there that could, do things for me, but I can't justify it. So I wouldn't come and ask Amy for it, because I would just say, yeah, it's really nice to have, It's like asking my dad for a pony. It'd be really nice to have, but I can't justify it.
Supervisor Abrams.
All right, I'm going to own this issue as being responsible for us not knowing anything about it, because when I agreed to be on this committee at the beginning of the year, I was told it was almost finished its work and it didn't have much to do.
Right.
And in the meantime, I never received any agendas or any notice that these meetings were occurring. And so there's nothing to attend if you don't know there's a meeting. But I didn't really look into it too carefully because of my preconceived notion that there wasn't going to be that much to do. So whatever it is, it's my fault. And so I take ownership.
I don't believe so.
No.
I don't
No.
believe that this would even come up in that meeting.
Yeah, this is separate from the parks governance, and the fact
Well-
that you weren't getting those agendas is not your fault, Elliot.
Thank you.
They found out that those emails were getting quarantined somewhere along the way, so they were never getting to you.
In any case, at this point, I'm interested in helping to solve this problem.
Right.
So.
I still think even if you knew about it, it would not change my comment. They have to sell it to me a little bit better. And they've
So-
asked for it every year, and they haven't sold it to me yet.
Okay, so the board is in agreement with the statement that's moving forward?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Amy, next.
Okay, 5-year staffing and study plan comments. Supervisor Koszewski said there have been significant changes in the area and this plan should be revisited. Supervisor Whitman agrees that it should be revisited and says also for the Parks and Rec positions, I would like to see estimated net impact and ongoing annual net impact for each proposed new position. And my comment was just that I think this needs to be reevaluated since we have a new executive director coming in. I think let him see what he needs.
I agree. Any other questions from the board on this side? I agree with you there, so we move forward on that.
Okay, and then lastly, we have some miscellaneous municipal comments. These are all from me. The first was, I hate that new construction fund has such a huge fund balance, so I'm wondering if we could take some of that fund balance and use it to support workforce and attainable housing programs and initiatives in the region. Second suggestion, the Act 537 plan, which is the update to the sewer service area. That plan hasn't comprehensively been updated since probably the early aughts. I think they did it in 2005 when I got to the region, and I don't remember a comprehensive update after that. It's been kind of piecemeal. So I think that needs to be moved up the work plan and comprehensively done. And then last one, or second to last one, we've talked about this already, is to find a better funding model for Parks and Rec for that agency that's based on acreage being maintained, and the adoption of memorandum of understandings with each municipality that outlines maintenance responsibilities should also be explored. This can help stabilize the staffing needs, which is something Christie's brought up, and it helps to even out the funding. And it also, the current funding model doesn't consider, like we're doing a fair bit of our own maintenance at our own parks because Center Region can't do it. They can't staff it. And so there are things that we want done that we're doing. So if we look comprehensively at the whole funding, we could actually then, across the board, say, and this was a discussion point this morning, that the time of the COG doing all your parks maintenance is probably come and gone, right? That time was years ago before everybody grew their parks. So now we need to be realistic about what you as a municipality need to put in to have and maintain your own parks.
So you have to consider that when you're thinking about it.
Yep.
How does the
Supervisor
distribution
Whitman,
of parks,
I'm sorry.
oh, sorry, how does the distribution of parks, park land look over the 6 municipalities? Any
So
idea?
I don't honestly know. I know that, I think that's in the regional comprehensive parks plan that they did. I think they looked at
Yeah,
that,
okay.
it captured how much
It
acreage
was,
is everywhere.
But it's been a number of years since I looked at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Susan Wheeler would be the one who would know that. And then the last comment, which I think came from me, I thought it came from Supervisor Whitman for a second. The COG should do a comprehensive review of their EV charging stations at all of its facilities as part of their facilities management plan, rather than piecemealing it.
I'm surprised that didn't come from me.
So, are you okay with all of these consensus comments?
I am. What's the
I'm
board's
even okay
consensus?
with Susan's little
With
finger pointing up there. Her little emoji, because it was,
Oh, the
it
right
was
thing.
very nice.
That was lovely.
Yeah, I'm worried about that one thing. One this year sometime.
So is the board okay with all our suggestions that are going?
I'll get a draft together tomorrow, and then I will send that out to y'all to take a look at. We have to get it back by the 19th, so ideally I'd be able to send it back next week.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Larry, and thank you, board. Next on the agenda is the update for the COG Parks and Recs Governance Special Committee.
So this is kind of a long, complicated one, but Sutan's like, move it along. So the Parks Governance Committee was created by an action of the General Forum in 2021. And they basically were charged with looking at the mission or purpose for the authority, the best governance structure to achieve that mission or purpose, and then the governing documents to achieve the mission or purpose. And then they were also tasked with additional supporting tasks assigned by the exec committee, determining the associated COG committee structure or relationship to supplement the work of the authority so that CRPR can continue to provide cost-effective, consistent, and high-quality parks and rec services to the region. So the committee presented a matrix, you may remember, of proposed duties and responsibilities to the General Forum in November 2023. And that matrix was endorsed by the General Forum. And since that time, the governance committee had been discussing the best way to accomplish the task of finding a structure that supports the relationship between the authority and Parks and Rec agency. So, as Supervisor Abrams mentioned, so Supervisor Trevino was going to these meetings, and he was meeting monthly with Susan Wheeler to go over and discuss the items that they were discussing in the committee. And I think you're right, Supervisor Abrams. I think everybody thought that we had sort of reached the end and we had the matrix and we knew the responsibilities and the committee was almost done with its work. So the committee's been meeting. Elliot's emails were getting quarantined, so he wasn't getting them. I, for some reason, was never on the distribution list, so I had to ask to get put on. So I went for Elliot to the June meeting. And at the June meeting, this proposal has been floated that takes the formerly known as Parks Capital Committee and morphs it into the Parks and Recreation Committee and gives it oversight over the Parks and Rec Authority, which is really problematic on a lot of different levels because an authority is supposed to be a separate entity under Pennsylvania municipal authority law. And a lot of what they're proposing to do is a duplication of effort. It would be looking at the budget issues, looking at the CIP, looking at staffing, looking at basically any funding request that would come forward, setting fees. These are all things the authority should be theoretically doing. So at the meeting, Christy Owens, the agency director, brought up that this really is not, maybe in her opinion, the right way to go because it's creating this other layer. And she met with the managers this morning and she said at our breakfast, I run around answering to all these different folks and then it makes it hard to know who my actual boss is because I have an authority and then I have a Parks Capital Committee and then I have this committee and that, and it makes it difficult. So during the discussion at the meeting, two members of the committee, College Township and Ferguson Township, are very much in favor of moving this committee structure forward to the General Forum. Harris and the school district said, look, we don't really have, like, if everyone else wants to go forward with it, we'll go forward with it, but we don't know that we see the need for it. And Kathy Madison, who's the rep from the authority, didn't think this was a good idea because she thought this was also duplicating the work of the authority. So we decided at that meeting to sort of put a pin in the discussion and have some more internal discussions and then come back at the July meeting and try to move forward. So I talked with Susan Wheeler because she has all the institutional knowledge and all the history on this. And we had a good conversation, and I know she talked to Supervisor Robb as well, about what was being proposed. So that Parks Capital Committee, which started, we believe it was 2003, 2004, somewhere around there. And Elliot, you probably remember. Elliot and I are probably the only two left that remember when that committee started, but it was really charged with, as Tom Fontaine said this morning, squirreling away the money to buy the regional parks because there was a desire to establish 2 regional parks, and the land was being offered from Penn State. And then Hess Field came in 2010. So the Parks Capital Committee, that's all it did. It squirreled away money for those parks. It looked at funding ideas, fundraising ideas, and it talked about the master site plans. And it probably should have been sunset in 2013, I think, when the last master site plan was adopted, or 2014, but it wasn't. So the committee structure that's still there, the Parks Capital Committee, doesn't have a real function anymore. And it, as Christy said this morning, they're meeting quarterly, but just to get updates on projects that are, and their updates that are being given elsewhere. And so the concern that we heard at the meeting loud and clear is communication and funding. And I said, if communication and funding are the issue, is there a different way to get to solve that issue that doesn't involve the creation of a committee that's duplicating a lot of efforts? Like, could you say, okay, Christy, you're gonna have a big proposal for the program specialist, so you need to come before the general forum and explain and answer questions. Because the other complicating factor is that, like, Bruce Lord in Harris Township is their representative to the Parks Authority. So he's going back directly to the board and giving them information. Cindy Solik is our representative, and she's doing a great job of coming back and giving information. But not every municipality has that, right? They don't have that line of communication. So is there a way to shore that up that doesn't involve more discussion and more committees? So the discussion this morning, the discussion Susan and I had too, was that maybe this needs to be paused until Mr. Estelle gets here and takes his position, and give him a couple of months to evaluate what's going on. And one of the discussion items this morning was that the authority, and it was interesting, we're having this discussion and the Water Authority Executive Director was sitting in the room with us. The authority's bylaws or articles of agreements were written back in the 1970s when Parks and Rec was vastly different in the center region. Those articles of agreement need to be updated, and the authority needs to decide if it's a financing authority or an operating authority, and there's a difference between how those two operate. And that discussion point needs to happen because once the authority figures out its role, right, and then Christy knows, okay, so I go to the authority for X, because the library board, again, the library is statutory under Pennsylvania law, but the library board, they function similarly. The library board says, okay, we agree with your budget, but then Lisa comes back to the finance committee, presents her budget to the COG, and it gets a blessing from the COG. Because the library they don't levy their own fees, right? So it's a very complicated web, and I understand the discussion. It all came out of that regional comprehensive parks plan that was done, that Susan was our rep to. And it's good to have the conversation because it has to be untangled, but I think that the sense that I got from being at the meeting, and I did say, because obviously I'm not Elliot, so I don't really have a vote, but I did say that if everybody else would go along with it, I'm sure Patton probably would not want to hold this up, but that this needs to be, the scope needs to be massively narrowed, like the responsibilities need to be addressed. But the sense I heard was, Gretchen Brandt from the school district said, I don't see the need for this. Like, I don't understand the creation of it. Bruce Lord said the same thing. Kathy Madison said the authority has to talk about it. So I think there's some benefit to going back in July and saying, why don't we just hit pause right now? Let Ben get here, right? He starts August 26th. The funding proposals will be vetted the way they're always vetted, which is through the finance committee, the program plan, and the budget cycle. And let's talk about this again in the winter, after he's had some time to kind of evaluate. I mean, it's a big operation, right? And let him evaluate what's going on. I just think that there's a lot of different competing interests, and that came out loud and clear at that meeting. And nobody has a good idea of how to get where they want to go. They're trying to find a solution to a problem that maybe doesn't 100% exist. Or maybe it's a different problem. So I wanted to, because again, the communication issues I think have finally been wrapped up and we're okay now, but because we weren't getting those, and I can send out, if you want, the links so you can watch or read any of the minutes from these meetings, just to get up to speed yourself, but I wanted to get some feedback, so Elliot and I, if I start going with Elliot to the meetings, so we know what your desire is with all of this moving forward.
Supervisor Abrams, is that okay with you?
It is, it is fine, and I spoke with Amy about the fact that I'm going to be out of town for this next meeting that's coming up, and so she'll be going, but I don't have any similar conflicts from then on through the fall.
Does the board have any problem with Amy being our representative?
Not at all. Can we deputize her? I mean, that's certainly the model that Larry and I have used. Facilities committee and with the power purchase agreement.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm happy to go. I'm happy to go with Elliot. Like
Yeah.
I'm happy to go because again, I have some of the history because of being. I used to go to the Parks Capital Committee meetings from 2006 until 2014. So I have some of that history. So I'm happy to sit in the room with him as well.
Yeah, and I'm very happy that Susan Wheeler is a part of this, and her recommendations go a great deal
Yep.
for this board.
Yep.
You know, and, you know, we've talked and she's talked with you when you've worked with her, so I'm all for whatever Susan Wheeler and you and Elliot come up with,
Yeah.
you know, but I'm in agreement to put a pause in it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, Supervisor Magruder?
Yeah, I'm in agreement to put a pause. I guess I'm just confused. Yeah, if it's duplicating efforts, I get putting a pause on things, but I guess I'm curious about what the intention of the pause is. Because one, and you explained some of it, but to me, I'm like, if you already have entities saying, school board, for example, I don't see a need for this. Is putting a pause just going to delay this to then try to concoct something that makes it seem relevant? And
Sure.
so to me, I think my standing is, from what you communicated, this isn't a necessary thing. If there's clearly communication issues and other things like that, well, let's get to those other silos and figure out, troubleshoot that. But I don't want the pause to be, let's pause it to try to concoct something to make this a relevant thing when it doesn't need to actually be.
I think the idea, at least in my mind, would be that the pause gives Ben time to come in as the new executive director, time to start evaluating how things are working. Because he's going to see with fresh eyes, right? The rest of us see with eyes that are colored by however many years of experience in the region. And let him come in and say, oh yes, there's a communication issue, or there isn't a communication issue, or whatever, and this is how I propose we fix it. I don't think we go back to, we'll take a pause, and then in 6 months, we're going to put forth this proposal again the way it's written now, right? I think this is an opportunity to do some exploration on his side, come in with fresh eyes, and then have a discussion about what does he see that's working, not working, in his background, how has he addressed similar issues maybe elsewhere, and have a collaborative conversation about getting to a place where we are addressing the perceived issues of communication and funding, and then maybe the issues that he notices. So I don't think it's just like we hit pause for 6 months and then we rip out the same idea. I think we hit pause with the idea that we're gonna try to address the fundamental, bottom level issues and move forward, that everybody's in agreement and collaborates on that decision.
It's helpful. Thank you.
Any other comment? Supervisor Abrams?
I agree with Amy, and I have no agenda on this at all, and I've never been on this committee before. And so I shouldn't have an agenda on it. And so, but the main thing is to get the communication going again so that we're organized and everybody knows what's happening.
I think I was on it 2 years ago.
Yes, we were.
We met one time.
What?
Once or twice.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, I was on it like 2 years
Oh,
ago.
that's what I thought.
We met like once or twice.
Plus, I'll note that of the two entities who said, we don't need to go forward with this, only one is a voting member in COM.
Yeah, Harris, yep.
So the other one is school board is not
Yeah.
technically a voting member. Even though
Okay.
she has a lot of very good opinions and worked on the SCASD playground design. So
Yep.
she comes with a lot of relevant background.
Okay, well, thank you. Is that
Okay,
it?
appreciate that, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Good time.
Amy, thank you for your time in addressing a lot of this. All right, next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there any item on the consent agenda that the board would like to discuss or remove at this time? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The consent agenda is approved. Next on the agenda is the manager's report.
So I just have a couple of things to touch on. Number one, we're going to have the joint meeting with the board, the planning commission, and the recreation advisory committee at Circleville Park on August 5th to talk about the Park Forest Middle School project. We'll look at the conditional use process, the traffic issues, and some other assorted items. I have asked the planning commission, I'd like to start that meeting earlier rather than, they usually start at 5. I'd like to start at 4:30 if that's possible. Does that work for you guys? I've asked the planning commission, that seems okay. There will not be a Zoom option for that meeting because we'll be in a park.
Okay.
But I'll bring water.
What park is it?
Circleville. And it'll be at the upper pavilion where the fireplace is. Off of Little Lion from the top, because that's closest to the site.
What date is this now?
August 5th, the first Monday of the month.
Amy, can you just get a reminder out?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're good with 4:30, I'll go ahead and advertise the meeting.
Guess I'll take more vacation.
And if people want to have it even earlier, I'd like that too.
No.
Okay, then
I have to take vacation.
then I'm opposed to making it earlier.
4:30 is good.
4:30 is okay? Awesome.
Sneak out the back door.
Next.
And then, next thing is I would like to use one of your meetings, and Mr. Schmidt alluded to this, one of your meetings in September as a joint meeting with the Planning Commission to talk about drafting workforce housing regulations. They had a great, they call it a chalk talk at their last meeting with Missy Schoonover from the Center County Housing and Land Trust and Jenna. So we'd like to actually start a deep dive into looking at what College has done, what Ferguson has done, what the borough has done, and start moving forward on those discussions. So I would propose we use your first meeting, the 11th, for that, and then we'll hold off and do all your regular business on your second meeting. If that's okay.
Give me 1 second. And what's the date on that again?
September 11th.
Yep, okay, good.
Okay. And then lastly, the Municipal League will be holding its annual summit in Scranton from October 10th through the 13th. The hotel reservations are going fast, so I need to know who wants to go so I can get everybody
Yep.
a room.
When is this?
October 10th through the 13th in Scranton.
10th to the 13th?
Yep.
Yep, put me down.
I can't go. My daughter's, the wedding's the weekend before. So I'll be in Minnesota.
Is it fun?
It's fun. You can go,
It
Susan?
was a great.
It's great.
You can get me a room.
Put me at tentative.
We'll book your room, and then if we have to cancel it, we'll yell at you and then cancel
It's
it.
better to book the room and
Yeah.
cancel it than to not book the room and ask for it
What
later.
days,
Yes.
what
You
days
won't
are
get
that?
it.
10 to 13.
October 10th to the
I
13th.
mean,
What days?
what days of the week are they?
It's usually a
Thursday?
Thursday
Sunday.
through Sunday.
Thursday through, yeah.
But actually, the last stuff stops on Saturday. I never stay till Sunday.
And Penn State is away.
Yeah.
Penn State is in
I'll go there.
University of Southern
Elliot, you wanna go?
California.
Yeah, we had a great time last year. It's a great event.
You know what, go ahead and put me down, so I'm realizing there's 2 days. We'll see if I can.
Yeah, we gonna be there, squad B.
And I'll let you know.
PT's in the house.
All right, Great.
Okay. And that's all I had for you this evening.
Did you talk about the single-use plastics?
Oh, sure. So we've been meeting, and we're working on a draft ordinance, and this is Ferguson, the borough, and Patton and College. And we're talking about, and this started a couple years ago, and the idea is that we're gonna ban single-use plastic bags and make straws something that you have to ask for to get. And so we're looking at model regulations from other municipalities across the state who've done this, and then we're started working on a frequently asked question idea, and then this draft ordinance, and we'd like to come to you guys in September, hopefully, with draft regulations so you guys can discuss how you feel about it. The idea is that they're, like, if you go to Wegmans now and you don't have a bag, you have to pay to get a paper bag, right? So we're talking about the fee structure, and we're also talking about if there's a fee, does the fee come back to the municipality? Does the fee go someplace else? Does the fee stay with the retailer? And also, how do we phase in a ban on single-use plastics when a lot of retailers have purchased bags and things? And this is more for the smaller mom and pops, right? The larger, like, the Targets of the world have to do this in other states. So it's still a concern, but probably less than it is on the mom and pops. And then we also have special events like Arts Fest this weekend. And how does that, does that somehow get grandfathered so that those folks can give out a plastic bag? You don't have to take your bags to Arts Fest. So it's all under discussion, and yeah, we're talking about it. We're trying to meet monthly to go through all the draft items and try to move something forward to see what we can do. Sutan, you look like you are against this 100%.
What?
I have an open mind to things. When this was initially proposed, I was highly against it.
Why?
For the various reasons. Check CNET. CNET, y'all roll the tape. But it would be helpful. I know y'all are going to provide something to us. It would be helpful to have some information prior to that.
Yes.
To have a more informed decision-making process.
Yeah, and one of the things, again, we're still like in the very bottom level of this, working on it. And I was reading an ordinance from Narberth, Pennsylvania today, and they just like re-amended their ordinance. And some of the things I liked about it was, like, for example, I went to Wegmans to get chicken yesterday after work. I can't get a plastic bag to put the chicken in because they don't have plastic bags there, right? I would like a plastic bag to put my chicken in. So that specific bag is called out as being exempt from their ordinance, so that if you have, if you're buying raw meats and you don't want to put it next to your other goods, you can get a bag. The single-use bags for picking up after your dog are exempt as well. So there's nuances that we need to look at. And the other thing is, and I keep telling our friends in the borough, like, I'm not in favor of rushing into something that's going to be slightly controversial and then have it fail. I'd rather think about all the things, talk about all the things, and implement something and do a lot of education first so that folks understand where we're going.
Yeah.
What they did in Hilton Head, where my sister lives, is they passed this ordinance, and so the stores bought thick plastic bags and said they were reusable.
Yes?
And you don't want that, so.
So I was working with Laura Fowler.
Yeah, but it came out of Laura's study that she did. Yep.
Yeah, so she worked with the Climate Action Sustainability Committee, or somehow I was involved in that, and we worked peripherally.
Yep.
And there've been a lot of surveys, and then there was I believe there was an assembly, just they shouldn't call it that, but basically people come and talk about it, so. Yeah, Westchester also has
Westchester has, we've looked at their regulations. We've also met, we had a stakeholder meeting, and we had the Downtown Improvement District represented. We also had the Center County Recycling and Refuse Authority represented as well. So there's a lot of different eyes that are kind of looking at this and trying to craft something.
Yeah, and it's going to be a long rollout, so it's not, so you won't end up with thicker plastic bags, you won't end up with bags. But you can't predict everything, like you couldn't have predicted the sun that was going to come through these windows. I mean, right. But it is something that you can fix. Yeah.
I think you could have predicted this.
If you thought to ask it, but nobody asked it.
They might not have asked it, but I'm pretty sure we know where the sun rises. It sets.
Well, thank you for the laugh for this evening. Amy, are you done?
I'm good, that's
Okay.
it, unless you have any other questions.
Any other questions? All right, moving on is the committee reports. And has the committee reports been submitted?
We only had one submitted by Doug for his,
I did not submit mine.
yeah, a lot of these committees got canceled.
Yeah.
this
Yeah,
summer.
facilities was canceled.
Climate action was canceled.
I think the solar power this month's gonna be canceled. Finance, I will be attending tomorrow.
Okay, and my public safety was canceled.
Human Resources was canceled, and we'll reschedule to the 17th, or we rescheduled that one too, so.
Okay. And seeing next on the agenda is other business, and since we don't have any other business, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all. The meeting is now adjourned.